Nordic workshop in Gothenburg. I'm sure we all had a great party last night, and most of us are still able to raise their hand. Today's panel discussion is continuation of last year's event in Turku, when we had for the first time panel discussion, and it's great pleasure to continue now with a new panel on the topic of responsible research assessment with or without the Nordic bibliometric indicator. My name is Janne Pölönen. I work at the Federation of Finnish Learned Societies, and I will be moderating the panel. Here is what we are going to do. So first, presentation of the panel, introduction to the Nordic indicator. Then we will have panel discussion, 3 rounds of questions and debates by the panelists. And then we will end with questions and comments. Hopefully we have at least 10 minutes time for that. So, this year's panel is very, very esteemed. We have, first of all, Marianne Gaufriot from IT University of Copenhagen, representing Denmark. From Finland, we have Laura Niemi from University of Turku. And it's great to welcome also Iceland in the panel now. So Baldwin Zario from University of Iceland will be discussing the developments in Iceland. From Norway, we have Gunnar Sivertsen from NIFU. And from Sweden, Björn Hammerfelt from the University of Borås. Then a few words about the Nordic publication indicator. This is something very similar. Tim and Raf presented on the first day from Flanders. So the Nordic publication indicator is designed to be used in the performance-based funding allocation of between universities. So it is an instrument for the institutional level. It has 3 main components. First of all, there is a complete national publication data integrated at national level. Then there is a second component of level rating of publication channels, meaning journals and book publishers and conferences and book series in some countries. This classification is not based on journal impact factor, but it is developed and decided by expert panels in the field. And the third component is a funding formula that transform the publication information and the journal and book publisher classifications into points or allocation of funding, core funding between universities. And in some form, Nordic publication indicator has been implemented, adapted, or used at national or institutional level in all Nordic countries, and our panelists will tell in more detail what has happened recently with the Nordic publication indicator in their countries. Then a little bit of background for today's discussion. We are all aware of the recent development and the strong international agenda for reforming research assessment. So CoARA published agreement for reforming research assessment in July last year. Now already over 600 organizations from Europe and beyond have signed the agreement, and also many institutions from the Nordic countries, as you can see there. CoARA agreement comes with 4 core commitments. First of them invites organizations to recognize the diversity of contributions. The second core commitment invites organizations to base research assessment primarily on qualitative evaluation, but supported with responsible use of metrics. The big question is, what does this mean? The third core commitment is about abandoning inappropriate uses of journal and publication-based metrics, and especially journal impact factor and age index are mentioned. And the fourth commitment is avoiding use of university rankings in research assessment. Well, against this background, maybe some information also on the Nordic publication indicator. So, CoARA agreement wants us to recognize diversity of publications. So when we use Nordic publication indicator, it is of course based on comprehensive national publication information. So in this picture from Finland, you can see with the black and gray bar areas the share of the total output in different main fields that is published in journal impact factor journals. So if we used only journal impact factor in the assessment and allocation of funding between universities, only that part of the output would be considered. When we use comprehensive national publication data and also the level ratings, we can also take into account peer-reviewed journal articles, conference articles, chapters, monographs published in outlets outside Web of Science. And this is the yellow area. And then on top of that you can see a blue area, including in Finland non-peer-reviewed output for professional and general audiences. And in Finland also that is counted in the funding formula. Then maybe about does Nordic publication indicator work? It is supposed to reward universities for publishing research output in more demanding, reliably peer-reviewed and strong leading outlets of their field. And we can say, based on some analysis comparing scorings based of UK higher education institutions. So when we score UK universities based on the REF scores, we saw yesterday a presentation on this, and we score same universities with UFO rankings and journal impact factor quartiles. We actually see that UFO classification produces almost same ranking order for the UK higher education institutions. And what is best? It outperforms journal impact factor quartiles. So hurrah for expert-based evaluation in journal assessment. But as you can see, it works much less well when you move it down to the lower level of aggregation. And then maybe a final slide about introduction. So, okay, expert-based evaluation of journals may be successful in identifying the leading outlets in different fields, but we also are concerned about the bottom of the publication activity. And we have also this recent European Union Council conclusions from this summer that has been very much celebrated for promoting non-profit open access, diamond open access publishing. But we have not paid so much attention to the fact that the same council conclusion also calls for rigorous peer review that should be continue to be the basis of scholarly communication system for ensuring scientific standards, validity and quality. And also, member states are invited to address in systematic manner the issue of predatory publishing and increase awareness of questionable, deceptive and low quality publishing. And so also here, expert-based evaluation maybe plays a role. So now we move to the panel discussion. And the first question we have asked our panelists to ponder on is what are the most important changes in the use of the Nordic bibliometric indicator in their country or institution. And first, I would like to invite Marianne to tell about recent developments in Denmark.
Yes, thank you, Janne. So the most important change in Denmark is that the Nordic bibliometric indicator is discontinued. So in December 2021, it was decided by our politicians that 2021 would be the last year where we would collect publication points for the universities and use them for our funding-based, performance funding-based model. So this means that we have the points from 2021, and they are reused in the following years, and I think that will happen up till 2025. And after that, I don't know what will happen. So that is a situation in Denmark. As you can see on my slide, already the year after we had the Research Portal Denmark introduced. It is a system that collects publication records from the universities, and it will be used for monitoring of Danish research. So in the political agreement, it was decided to monitor Danish research, but without introducing a new indicator. So this was a quick overview of the national level, and of course there has been some impact on the institutional levels. So maybe you heard the presentation by Bjørn Larsen yesterday about Aalborg University. They developed their own new Nordic bibliometric indicator, one could say, with the help from Gunnar. And they use it for their internal budget model. So at my university, the IT university, we used the Nordic bibliometric indicator for an internal scoring system. And at the moment, it is an open question whether we will have a replacement or not. So at the moment, we don't use this a publication indicator for our own system. Yes, so summing up for the Danish case, the Nordic bibliometric indicator was introduced to be used at the national level. It has been used at other levels as well, even though it wasn't the plan. And right now, we don't have a national publication indicator in Denmark.
Thank you, Marianne. Then we have news from Finland. Laura, please.
Thank you. Well, in Finland, we have the situation that the publication forum in Finnish julkaisufoorumi or UFO grading is used in the national level since 2012. Actually, maybe it was accounted in the basic funding of the universities, and since 2015 the 13% of the university basis funding from the Ministry of Education and Culture is based on publications, and the UFO grading is used there. And now, since 2021, the importance of the publications has grown from 13 to 14%, and also there is additional this kind of extra money shared if there are open access publications of peer-reviewed publications, and because we have UFO strongly connected in the basic funding model. The Finnish universities is using also, it's used in the national level, but unfortunately many of universities or most universities is also using the UFO classification when they monitor on or develop their activities in the local context, and also their inner funding models, the UFO grading is used. And in many Finnish universities also, the UFO is unfortunately bring also down to the individual level. So researchers are asked to publish in, for example, in UFO 3 articles, and that's somehow problematic because it's, of course, the UFO grading is not meant for that, and also there is some disciplines or some areas of research which don't have the UFO 3 level publications. If they want to develop the core of the their field, then they need to, of course, publish where the discussions of the field is. And for example, in entrepreneurship, we don't have UFO 3 level publications. The highest and the most valued in the field, these kind of publications, they are ranked in UFO level 2. So that when the university level, we are asked to produce UFO 3 level publications, that's really problematic. So we need to think about how we do that. So that's the current situation. Even though we are many of the universities, almost everyone is CoARA signatories, still this is the most important thing, that our performance is valued through the publications.
Thank you, Laura. Then, news from Iceland. Sorry. Baldwin, please.
Hello. Hi, nice to be here. Well, a little bit about the situation in Iceland. Firstly, we're of course a very small country, and we would never be able to maintain a bibliometric list like the Norwegians and Finnish do. So we have an internal evaluation system in place in Iceland, that uses information from the big databases like Scopus and Web of Science, and we also maintain a small list of Icelandic journals that we evaluate ourselves. But we just recently started using the Norwegian and the Finnish list in our evaluation, so we are starting where the others are maybe stopped doing it. So we are 20 years behind, so to speak. But this evaluation, we evaluate all public universities in Iceland in this system, but it doesn't have any influence on the basic funding of Icelandic universities. It's mainly used for distributing funds within universities in Iceland. But that is about to change now, because we're 20 years behind everyone else. So what was introduced now in September, the government introduced a new system of distribution model for Icelandic universities, and they are implementing an incentive for bibliometric excellence, something like that. But as it has been introduced to us, there will be indicators from Scopus used, not the Nordic list. So Nordic list, we will continue to use it in our evaluations, but we have to do something if the Norwegians and Finnish stop maintaining the lists. But as it is now, we are not planning on doing that. Yeah, but as I said, as things progress, we need to react just in accordance with what the Norwegians and Finnish do. Thank you.
Thank you, Baldwin. Then we have views from Norway. Gunnar, please.
Yes, something has happened since we were in Turkey last year. The Norwegian government decided that the indicator will cease to influence the funding of higher education institutions as of 2025. It will still influence the basic research funding in the institute sector and the hospital sector. And publications will still be reported in all three sectors and used for statistics and other purposes. So it is used by the government for other purposes than the funding model. And the register of journal series and publisher will continue, and the government strongly emphasized that when they took the decision. So it will continue in Norway. And as I will come back to that, but we would like to have more Nordic collaboration also on the list. Now the government, it was not a guillotine, but they removed something from a total system that perhaps motivates the quality assurance and the completeness of the data. And somebody has to look at those new problems that this creates. Because statistics is no good if it's biased and incomplete. So there is a working group set up now to work until June 24 and come with solutions to this situation that the government created by this decision.
Thank you, Gunnar. And last but not least for this round, Björn, please, news from Sweden.
Yes, good morning, everyone. So I can report no news from Sweden. We still haven't implicated or start using the Norwegian model on a national level. But on the other hand, it has been an influential model for a long time in Sweden at many universities. I think the last count said 13 universities that use it in some form. And I would actually start with an anecdote from this morning, because I talked to a German scholar this morning about this panel, what I was going to do. Oh, you're going to talk about the Norwegian list or the Norwegian model. I actually had a problem with that, or I had an issue, because I had an accepted publication for a conference, and there were two options for publishing. One was ranked as number 2 in the Norwegian system, which gives points at Gothenburg University, and these points are given to the institution, quite a big sum compared to many other places. But it's also points that are counted when you have your yearly review. So if you have 5 points for 1 year, for example, you might get a little bit more salary. But the other option was an open access option, and perhaps one that was a little bit more prestigious within the field. So which one should this person choose? I gave my advice, and we can talk about that advice at another time. But I think that illustrates that the Norwegian systems is in the minds of many scholars in Sweden, at those that are at departments where you actually use it for the allocating resources, but also in other places. So people think about the Norwegian system, and it's used as a quality list. And it's this form as a list which you can refer to, sometimes to make an informed decision, and sometimes maybe ending up in like in this case, that you have to ponder different options. So it's very much alive in Sweden, but it's not implemented on the national level. One thing that we see is that also it's kind of a creative use of the list or of the system. So we see institutions adding points for artistic work, adding points for open access, taking some of the elements of the Norwegian model, but then making it into their own model and using it on different parts of the university. So I think that's the strength of this system, or the pervasiveness of the system, is that it's very much can be adapted to different parts, and that will also ensure, I think, that this will live on. Even if it's not officially used, it will live on for a long time, I think, and having an effect on how people think about publishing. Thank you.
Thank you, Björn. So now we have a great overview of what is taking place in different Nordic countries. We can move on to the next question. So now moving the discussion more to the direction of responsible research assessment and the CoARA agreement agenda. So we asked all panelists to discuss what have been the main concerns about the uses of the indicator with respect to the responsible research assessment agenda and the CoARA agreement. And we start again first with Marianne, news from Denmark.
Yeah, thank you, Janne. So it's a bit difficult for me to answer this question because the indicator is discontinued in Denmark, and there's happening a lot in this discussion about responsible research assessment. But what I see in Denmark is 3 independent developments, as you can see illustrated on my slide. So one is the Nordic bibliometric indicator, discontinued in Denmark. The next is the launch of the research portal Denmark, which I also mentioned before. And then we have the agreement on reforming research assessment, and that is gaining more and more support in Denmark. But just to illustrate what I mean when I see these as independent developments, so the Agency for Higher Education and Science, they say that there's no decision to have a replacement for the Nordic bibliometric indicator. Of course, that has been a discussion after it was discontinued in Denmark. But they don't discuss the research portal Denmark in this context, and they don't mention the CoARA agreement in this context. Also, the agency, they fund the research portal Denmark, but again, no information about the portal being a new source for a new indicator, or no discussion in relation to CoARA. So the portal, as it is right now, will only be used for monitoring Danish research and ad hoc analysis of Danish research. So I also asked one of the Danish signatories of the CoARA agreement about their use of the Nordic bibliometric indicator, which they have stopped. And I said, okay, but that could be a positive thing because that is compliant with the agreement you just signed. And they told me what they are two unrelated events. So this is just to give you an idea about, I really see this as three independent developments in Denmark. But to me, that is an opportunity to discuss the recent developments, the research portal Denmark, in the context of responsible research assessment. So what do I mean by this? When we look at these portals, we have them in Denmark, they're also in many other countries. We had a nice presentation from Flanders, for example. They are presented as not a tool for research evaluation, but they are super easy to use for research evaluation. And that is why I think it's relevant to discuss responsible research evaluation in the context of these portals. They are very dynamic. That is maybe something that differs compared to how we would normally do research evaluation. So that can make discussing responsible research evaluation more difficult in relation to these research portals. An example is that it's very easy to integrate new indicators. For example, in Denmark, we had a discussion about the UN Sustainable Development Goals, whether they should be showed in our portal, or actually you can find them in our portal, but how they should be displayed in the portal. And I think that's a good topic to discuss in relation to responsible research assessment. I know that Laura Himmonen from Finland, she has done some preliminary research on this topic in relation to the Finnish portal, and I think it's a very interesting question, and I hope to see presentations on it next time we meet, next year for this workshop.
Thank you. Thank you, Marianne. Then considerations from Finland. Laura, please.
Yes, so in Finland we have the situation that in the Finnish higher education system there is 13 universities and 22 universities of applied sciences, which has currently almost over half, and almost everyone is currently become signatories of the CoARA. And we have quite good network in Finland also. We have had a lot of national discussion about the CoARA commitments and how organizations should develop their research and researcher assessments. Many of the organizations have designed different kinds of inner models on that at the moment, because there is quite many of the, for example, quite many of the universities have taken from their own perspective, taking the look at the CoARA. And in Turku, for example, we have created a policy document on responsible assessment of research and researcher. It's openly available in our website if you are interested to look at that. We have this policy document, and there is this kind of a toolbox in that, which broadens the scope of the what should be valued when we assess research or researchers. And I think that's also something that the publication is one, and then there is like 45, 46 other things that we should value. So I think when we continue to implement the CoARA commitments to our organizations, we need to have this kind of a national discussion also that we are moving in the same direction. And the main concern here is that this is a change in an existing culture. We need to think about the ways how we going to use the UFO grading in the future. I think it has benefits, and it should not be totally dismissed or stop used. But I think this kind of ways when we recognize other things that researchers are doing, that's really important according to CoARA also. And in Finland we have, I think there is an opportunity because we are trying to develop this kind of Finnish career assessment matrix. So I think that could be together with the Nordic bibliometric, this kind of indicator, UFO grading, together they are really strong, and I think we can meet the CoARA commitments with those.
Thank you, Laura. Then Baldwin, views from Iceland.
Yes, there are two institutions in Iceland that have signed CoARA, the University of Iceland and the Icelandic Center for Research. And I think they went about it the Icelandic way. We'll just sign it and let's see how we're going to fulfill the requirements for this. So we haven't really discussed how we're going to react to to CoARA and these things. But in my opinion, we have a lot of opportunities in our current system of evaluation, because in our system we are not only evaluating publications, but we are also evaluating all kinds of other activities, teaching, administrative work, service for the public and service for the academic community. So we can hopefully somehow, adjust our systems to fulfill the requirements of CoARA. But as I said, we really haven't started discussion in Iceland about this. So yes, thank you.
Thank you very much, Baldwin. And then
yes, there has been a concern about the use at the individual level. But before I return to that, CoARA is being discussed by the National Publishing Board, which is the leading organization on top of the publication indicator. And it has many sub-panels also. So already when CoARA was signed, we were discussing what is the relation between the indicator and CoARA. And this publishing board is also responsible for guidelines for good use of the indicator. And the strive to come to open access publishing has also dominated the discussions of the publishing board. So you can't really use the Norwegian indicator without having the academic influence on the indicator organized in this way. So so far the National Publishing Board has done two things. That we redesigned the indicator to make it technically difficult to apply to the level of individuals. And in fact, it is very difficult now because of the way it's measured. And the same is true for the Aalborg model, the new Aalborg model. It's technically impossible, in fact, to use at the individual level. And then we have these guidelines for individual level bibliometrics, which are more concrete and extensive than DORA and Leiden Manifesto, although those agreements are discussed in the guidelines. And they have also been published in English. And the same guidelines were republished in NORCOM, that is our career management guidelines, which were in place before the CoARA. Then there was a critique of the indicator based on DORA until 2019 because all the top journals were not open. But then they were open through these publish and read agreements. And so the DORA is not so much discussed in connection with the indicator. And also CoARA and the indicator has not been a discussion really, except in those bodies that are responsible for the indicator.
Thank you, Gunnar. And then let's move on to Björn, please.
Yes. I found this question a bit hard to answer. I think partly because the discussion on evaluation, I think that is part of why we don't have a national system that is visible, that the discussion on how to evaluate research quality is not ongoing in Sweden and not visible. I think there are a few people, like Gustav, for example, and the Forum for Bibliometricians that discuss these things and has also written very well on CoARA. But otherwise, the discussion is not there. And I can also note that, for example, here you hear very little from the Swedish Research Council, for example, on these issues. So what happens is that a lot of institutions and also the Research Council has signed CoARA, but you cannot see any discussion of what are the implications of this in Sweden. So I think we probably have to wait and see what the new government will do. They are busy with many other things than the research policy at the moment, but what will be their focus? Will they go back to focusing on excellence and have some kind of more direct system for evaluating research and allocating funds? Then probably this discussion will re-emerge. But for the moment, a lot of institutions seem to sign CoARA in the same way as you sign the agreement when you download an app or something. You just scroll through it and sign, well, it looks good, and then they continue as before. Yeah, we'll see what the development. I hope that there will be, maybe through CoARA, maybe in other means, more of an informed discussion about this in Sweden, because at the moment it's not much to report, I'm sorry to say.
Thank you, Björn. Very, very interesting. So very different approaches in different countries. Some countries have already organized at national level very strong discussion, and there are CoARA national chapters already being set up at least in Norway, and Finland is ready to propose its own. And then in Sweden, for instance, the discussion is much less, let's say, organized nationally. So then let's move on to the final question about the role of journal evaluation in addressing predatory, questionable, deceptive, and low-quality publishing practices. And I remind panelists that this was a bit shorter round of comments, so 2 minutes per panelist. So Marianne, please.
Yes, thank you, Janne. So I think this is a very good question and a very difficult question when I started thinking about it. Because today when you look at journal publications, there are many different forms and there are many different routes from manuscript to publication. Also, if we talk about predatory journals and so on, there's no one common definition of what it is. So, for example, sometimes it's very important to discuss open science practices when you evaluate a journal. And in other cases, open science doesn't matter at all. So I think this is a very good question. I asked around in my network because I couldn't come up with an answer. So I asked clever people in my network, okay, what do you do when you have to evaluate a journal that is new to you? And they give me different examples, and I think I can sum them up as different whitelists. So I will continue with this idea of when you evaluate a new journal, a journal you don't know, you look it up in a whitelist. If we look at the options, you could say we have in Denmark, until 2021, the Nordic bibliometric indicator, or our implementation in Denmark, could work as a whitelist, at an updated list of journals where we could publish to be included in the model. But this list is not updated anymore, so we don't have a Danish whitelist anymore. Then they have the new model from Aalborg, and when I read about that, I saw that you use Scopus and the Norwegian list and the Finnish list as well. So that was in the report, at least. So yeah, that could be a possibility. So I thought about the research portal Denmark. Do they have a solution for this? But their aim is to cover all Danish research publications. So I think it's outside their scope to evaluate the publication channels. So the final development in Denmark is a CoARA agreement, and they say that you should abandon inappropriate use of journal and publication indicators. To my knowledge, they don't have a solution for how to evaluate journals. But maybe that will be a topic in one of the new working groups under CoARA. Maybe some of the other panelists knows more about this. But very good question, Janne. Thank you for that.
Thank you. Then Laura.
Yeah, I think I also struggled a bit with this question. It was difficult to answer, and I think that I think even though in CoARA and several sources there is this kind of request that we don't use this kind of publication indicators in evaluations, but I think still the evaluation of the publication channel is needed, and I try to squeeze this in the 3 points why these kinds of lists are needed, because they shapes the operating culture by creating assumptions that what is good quality research and what is the good research practice in the field. So when we discuss about the publication channels, then those practices that is used in those channels are coming down in the work of a researcher. So I think this is really important to evaluate how these publication channels work. So then we are also we might affect also the culture, how the research is done through this kind of evaluation. Then I think this kind of evaluation is serving as a tool for research organizations to also direct their research in specific forms of publications, and that's it could be a good thing, but also something that it not only used only that to direct the work of the organization, but then we need other this kind of evaluations. But then also the publication channel evaluation is needed because it also advances and improves the impact of the research. So if we focus on those publication channels which are open access. For example, then the research results is more widespread, and then also these kind of open access practices can be implemented better in the organization when they are also embedded in the publication channel. So there is reasons why this kind of evaluation is still needed, I think.
Thank you, Laura. Then Baldwin.
Yes. Like in Iceland, we don't have the capacity to maintain a list of whitelisted journals. So what we have done is just mixing routes, like using the impact factors of the big databases and the Norwegian and Finnish lists. And I think that is maybe the best way to try to identify the reputable journals. But this is a problem. Just to be included in Web of Science and Scopus is not enough to make sure that the journals are reputable. So I would support some kind of whitelist for the Nordic countries, something that we could use together to identify these journals. So yeah.
Thank you, Baldwin. And then Gunnar.
So the Norwegian register has gradually developed to serve the additional purpose of a whitelist. And the need for this function has now been strongly emphasized and will be supported by the government. And I think deep down in that understanding is that it's not only a question of some predatory journals. It's because we have not so far implemented a business model for open access that stimulates research quality and good research economy and availability at the same time. So article processing charges are stimulating quantity over quality. And we now are in a kind of transition where we experience crisis. So we really need journal evaluation, but we don't need only quantitative journal evaluation. We need journal evaluation performed by panels of experienced researchers, those that are experienced with using the same journals or being on the boards of them. So I think now, much more than before, we need to return to the idea of the Nordic list, which was once supported by Nordforsk, to move forward. And it's also to have Iceland and Sweden part of the influence on the lists, if we organize it together. So far the Norwegian list is only influenced by Norwegian researchers. But as I say, we have now another and more important reason to collaborate on the Nordic level on the lists. And I think we could go forward here with a good example to the solution of the present crisis in the journal market from the perspective of research quality.
Thank you, Gunnar. And then Pierre.
Yes, thank you. So I like to be as positive as my other panel members about journalists, and I am to some degree, but I'm also a bit pessimistic. So I will spend 1 minute saying why I think this is a good idea, and 1 minute saying why I think that maybe journalists might be problematic in the future. So first of all, I think we really need journalists in the way we evaluate science now, because we have this problem with a lot of questionable journals, that I like to call them. And I think the list is a way of taking back control to the academic community, like the Norwegian list or Norwegian model is doing. And a concrete example is, for example, MDPI, which was listed as X in the Norwegian system, which was, would I say, a political intervention in the academic publishing system. At the same time, the Swedish Research Council offered a discount for researchers for MDPI, supporting that model. So we could see the different kind of political stance is making then. In that sense, I think the lists are very important for taking control. But then on the other hand, I think maybe there will be difficulties even if you want to do this, because these mega journals that are establishing now are not all bad quality, they are mixed quality. So we have special issues that could be of really good quality, and some of them are really, really bad. And this is a model that seems to be spreading, whatever we say about it, and that means that evaluating on the journal level for some of these journals is extremely difficult because they are so large, and the quality differences within the journals are also quite large. And the other factor is that we see a development from only looking at published works to see that the publication process is becoming more unclear. So you have preprints, then you have different versions, you have online reviews. So journal evaluation will be more complicated when you follow the whole publication process. You don't have the final article only to evaluate, you have the whole process. So I think that is challenging for this kind of journal evaluation which the Norwegian list represents. Yes, thank you.
Thank you, Björn. This turned out to be a very, very fruitful question and very important considerations. Also the challenges that Björn raised with the very, very large journals. Is it then reasonable to assess outputs based on at the journal level? Now it is time for comments, questions with the audience, and I want to thank panelists for keeping very well the time. So we have indeed almost 10 minutes time for questions. So anyone, please, for questions for our panelists.
Alex Rushforth, CWTS. Thanks for the really interesting discussion. I just wanted to think aloud one theory about CoARA and why it seems to be quite jarring for a lot of bibliometricians. I think that's probably because it takes ownership of organizational assessments in its statements, and a lot of what they are asking for is really putting peer review at the center. So I suspect in certain countries where peer review is really the leading method in a national evaluation system, then it's possible for quite a lot of the demands of CoARA to be absorbed. However, when it comes to more of these performance-based research funding systems, bibliometric allocation systems, etc., then this is very jarring, I think, for lots of bibliometricians or people that know about these kinds of different policy instrument mixes. So that's just a comment. Perhaps somebody wants to respond.
Yes, please, panelists, do you have a response to?
Thank you, Alex, for the question. It's important to distinguish between research assessment systems and funding allocation systems in the Nordic countries. These are not combined as in the UK. In Norway, we have a distinctive research assessment system, which is peer review based, and it's for formative purposes. It gives advice. And then we have what we try to have, a legitimate funding allocation system, not only based on lobbyism, but on whether universities can show what they are doing and then get insights for themselves into what they're doing. And then sometimes the data that these indicators produce are also used in the research assessment system, but only to provide information to the panels. And so there's no degree or rating set by bibliometrics in the National Research Assessment System. So this is why we don't feel in Norway that CoARA is in conflict with what we do. But it inspires at present discussion of further development of the publication indicator.
Marianne, please.
Yeah, maybe a short comment. What I can see is happening in Denmark, where it is my impression that up till now, research evaluation in many cases has just been we do what the others have done or what we did last year. Then of course there are experts like us who like to think more about it, but the general picture is that people think, okay, it is what it is. It's not something we think about changing or making better. And I think that CoARA has started a discussion about that in Denmark, that you can reflect about how you do research evaluation. And I have seen the Independent Research Fund Denmark, they had a workshop where they dived into how we use indicators, how we go about our evaluations of the research proposals we get. And I think that was a very simple and a very good exercise inspired by the CoARA.
Thank you. Any other questions, comments?
Hello, Jon Holm, Research Council Norway. So I come to the field of bibliometrics from national research assessments, the type that Gunnar was just referring to. And when listening to now the second round of discussions about one indicator, it makes me reflect upon the difference between being a bibliometrician and being an evaluator. So in evaluation, we always work towards purposes. So what we do is to check if a specific purpose has been met and with what costs, and if the means to go there are the right ones and so on. And I think in order to move forward, we really need to ask ourselves, and that's also asked in CoARA, what does a good research system look like? And then the problem with CoARA is that they have the answer to, well, I think we can agree on that there are certain shortcomings of the current system. It needs to take into account the diversity of competences. It needs to be more directed towards societal needs and so on. But how to get there is the big question. And maybe I think CoARA is kind of suggesting that if we only use qualitative data and peer review, we will automatically end up with something that is useful and good. So what we really need is more information about the system and what works. And I think that will be a very important development forward. We need to know more about the system, and if you want to know more about the system, you will probably need both qualitative and quantitative data. And you will need another issue is that because research is becoming more expensive because of huge expenses for equipment and so on, and also the requirements to work responsibly, there are costs with that, meaning that probably we will have to do more priorities. And if you are going to do priorities, you will need some kind of data that you can use across fields and across institutions. And that's, I think, really where indicators come in, that in order to use resources in a good way, we will need more indicators. So this is a very complex picture. And if I should try to say one thing that I think as working with data, working in bibliometry will be important, is to try to broaden the database of quantitative data. And of course, many people say this, but I think that's really important to include in our next panel discussions, is how do we get the useful data in order to know if we are on the right way to a specific goal.
Thank you. We have still time for a brief comment or question.
Hello, Laima from University College Dublin, Ireland. So I have written critiques of metrics, and I do want to kind of like clarify what that means in the context of CoARA, in the sense that I think metrics, there are two uses for bibliometricians. They are data. So you want to have good data. In the context of research assessment and research evaluation, they are policy instruments. So the problem, I think, in this particular context is that we want to, for bibliometricians, you want to make sure that the quality of your data will continue to be good and valid and legitimate. So with all the publications in, for example, questionable journals, bibliometric data becomes actually not good. The quality is becoming junky, and that is relevant to research evaluation as a policy instrument. That is, so if CoARA in this particular context that would actually fix the problem of actually maintaining the data, good data for bibliometricians, I think that should be actually really supported by the bibliometric community.
Thank you. I think that was a very good final comment. And now it is time to thank our panelists for excellent discussions, for active participation of the audience. Give a big hand. And now it is time for the coffee break, and I hope we see you again in Iceland next year in panel business.